In just a few minutes, a young mom and stepmom of 6 children will be standing before a courthouse, and then a little bit later she'll be standing before a Sessions County judge in Savannah, in Hardin County in Tennessee. She's 25 years old, and in her care will be in that court with her husband, Bill, one child, Allison, 17 months old. She has a remarkable story to tell, and some of this will be presented to the judge in an effort to dismiss the charges against her. There are several charges, 4 of them altogether. Well, 4 of them, at least 4. And she's making an argument about the constitutionally guaranteed right that you, my listener, have forsaken and forgotten, and that is the right of moving yourself and your property from point A to point B without asking the government for permission. Because in our day, everybody thinks that you cannot travel on the public road in a car or truck without having first the approval of the government to be involved in commercial activity. And that is the argument that Tracy Arnold, as she has explained to me, will be making. So, Tracy, you're going to be heading to, you're in Hardin County, and you live in Adamsville, and your husband and you and your one child in tow, I guess you couldn't find care for that little one, are heading towards Sessions Court. What's going to happen in the court?
I'll be challenging the jurisdiction and questioning the officer as to his capacity to stand as a law. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. You'll be questioning the officer.
Pretty much, I'll be standing on my rights and questioning the officer as to what main statute imposes the duty on me. And, I'm sorry.
Go ahead. We're listening. My listener and I, we're here waiting.
Hey.
You want what authority?
This is really hard, but I've been charged with a false identification and multiple commercial charges, and made it clear to the officer that I was not for hire and I was not operating in any privileged capacity, being for profit affecting a public interest. So we will be making it known that I did not apply for any goods, services, or privileges, and my property is not used as an instrument of commerce in any for-profit activity affecting a public interest.
So you're talking there about the moving of yourself and your children. That day, you had all 6 children and stepchildren in your car, and on the day you were arrested by Crump Town Officer Will Banks, you were not involved in a commercial activity. What are we supposed to make out of that? What were you doing, in fact?
I was taking my daughters to the park, and I made it known to the officer that I only used my property for family purposes and never for commercial for hire purposes.
Why is that an important distinction, Tracy Arnold?
Well, because the Constitution grants us the right to movement, and Scripture also grants us the right to movement. And what they've done is they've issued a license and a fee for our movement, and they have put us all under the category of being for-profit affecting a public interest. Because the Constitution of the United States grants them the authority to tax property, which is the ad valorem tax, which we'll pay. We're happy to pay taxes on the ad valorem. Okay. But also the privilege, and a privilege is for-profit activity affecting a public interest.
So when, let's say, a trucking company has an 18-wheeler with a huge box on the end of it carrying cargo, that is an activity affecting the public interest, and that party should somehow be in a different category than you, Tracy?
Absolutely. They're making their living on the roads, using these roads as their way to make money. And, therefore they're putting a lot of wear and tear on these roads.
And you're not doing that, you're saying?
Well, I'm not arguing that I'm not putting wear and tear on the roads, but I'm arguing that the statutory requirement is all privilege and all commercial purposes. if they'd like me to pay a fee for the use of the roads, they can send me a bill.
And they have not done that, the officials at the
Correct.
Department of Safety. Okay, so what you're saying is that you, as a private user, having a private purpose for traveling on the public right of way, are not making money at it, as, let's say, Covenant Transportation Company here in Chattanooga is, or any other shipper, or someone who hauls in a straight body truck, let's say, boxes from Atlanta to Oklahoma City passing through your town, or a taxi company, or maybe a courier service, a wrecker service, Greyhound
Correct.
bus service.
And under this driver's license, the regular driver's license that every man and woman had, Uber drivers, people who are making money on the roads are able to obtain that license and pursue their business.
So an Uber driver, again, is in a separate category in commercial, as apart from
Correct.
the category in which you are operating, or in which you are traveling, I guess I should say.
Correct. I'm exercising my right to move.
This is David
to
Tulis.
Travel.
This is David Tulis, and we're talking with Tracy Arnold. She's a young mom, 25 years old, married. Her husband, Bill Arnold, is a Linux software manager and assistant and programmer. And she has 6 children of as young as 17 months. The one, Allison, who will be in the court with her today, they're heading towards Sessions Court. They're just about to leave their house in Hardin County. And Tracy has some, I would say that you're issuing the minority report because most people don't understand that they do have this right to travel. So describe the difference between commercial use of the highway and private use. Why is private use somehow in a different category, and why are you insisting that the 1937 Driver's License Act should not apply to you?
Well, that act did not make a nugatory my constitutional rights, and if they did, then it would be a nullity.
All right, say that again. I don't think we quite caught that, Tracy.
Okay, if they did place a fee on my right to go from one place to another, it is unconstitutional and it is not law.
The whole Driver's License Act, you're saying?
Correct.
If the Driver's License Act destroyed or abrogated a constitutional right, you're saying it cannot be constitutional and will not stand on appeal.
Correct.
All right. So did that act destroy a constitutional right, Tracy? What's your argument going to be?
No, I don't believe it did because it's for commercial purposes. And for commercial purposes, then yes, a license is appropriate constitutionally because the Constitution says that, the states shall have the power to tax these businesses and occupations.
And so
all of these people in commerce and using these roads for hire, and they are required to have a license or pay that tax. The Supreme Court has ruled a license as a mere tax receipt, and they've also ruled that a privilege is for-profit activity affecting a public interest. Tell me why I need to be taxed for my right.
And, of course, no right can ever be taxed.
Exactly. I believe it's Murdoch versus Pennsylvania that says that if they do place a fee and they charge a license and a tax or a fee for it, then, they cannot. They cannot tax a right. And then Shuttlesworth is what says that if they do that, then you can continue in that right with impunity, which means that they cannot punish you.
Well, isn't there a noted American case? I'm trying to remember the name, but I think it's U.S. versus Miller, which says the exercise and assertion of a constitutional right cannot be converted into a crime. Did Officer Wilbanks act in bad faith to convert your free activity into a crime, or did he do it ignorantly and innocently? Tracy, what's your take on his actions?
I honestly believe it was malicious and it was intentional. I do believe he's ignorant of the law, but he mocked me and laughed at me, and they joked about going and having a beer afterwards, and so I do believe that part of it is that he's incompetent in the law, but I believe that the other part is an abuse of authority.
Well, what would happen if here's the question from my listener, Tracy Arnold. What would happen if no one had to be under the Department of Safety and Homeland Security in travel? Would we have chaos on the roads? Would we have wild crashes that are unaccounted for? Would we have people on the road who would pose an injury or a threat to themselves and to others? What would happen in a free market in travel? Would it be a disaster, or would there be internal restraints of the marketplace that would work in that market?
I'm only 25 years old, so I wasn't alive 60 years ago. But I do believe that there would not be chaos. I don't believe that this piece of plastic or, the piece of metal in the back of your car protects the people.
And are you? Well, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say that, people want to argue that if your property's stolen, then they can track it through the license plate. But somebody could easily take the license plate off, but they can't even identify a car from far away through the license plate. They automatically look for the make and model of the car. So you can't argue that the license plate is going to save you, or that the license is going to save you. All this is a huge tax scheme.
So your argument is, in part, Tracy Arnold, that the 1937 Commercial Driver's License, Commercial Operators and Driver's License or Chauffeurs Act, what is the Commercial Driver's License Act of today, did not destroy a constitutional right, and so it allows for regulation of one type of travel and use of the roads, but does not molest or injure the private constitutionally guaranteed rights of others, sort of parallel to that, who are using the roads privately. That would include probably tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of immigrants in our state. And people like you.
Right, but if nobody's causing a damage to another man, he has the right to be let alone.
And that's an old common law theory, I think.
I'm not sure what it is, but I know that we shouldn't be harassed. There's a court case that says at the outset it cannot be questioned that the public generally has an absolute right to the use of the highways. So if we have an absolute right to these roads in a customary and reasonable manner, so long as they are not properly closed to the public, and it also says that it includes the right in so doing to the use of the ordinary and usual conveyances of the day, and under the existing modes of travel includes the right to drive a horse-drawn carriage or a wagon thereon. But the Supreme Court has ruled that this is an absolute right. And if we have an absolute right, it cannot be taxed. And I understand that, people want to argue that it's going to be chaos, or, we can't have control of the people. But prior to 1960 or 1920, I don't believe that this was chaos.
So you're saying in 1936, when everybody traveled in cars and trucks without any kind of government permission, we did not have mayhem on the roadways.
Right, and I also argue that we have more chaos with the license and with insurance because people feel immune. People feel like they can do as if whatever they wish because they have an insurance company that is going to cover them should they cause a damage to somebody.
So you're saying that mandatory insurance creates an incentive for carelessness?
Absolutely.
And most car accidents that we could find record of are among licensed drivers, since they are the huge majority of users on the public way. Tracy.
Yes, I completely agree.
Now, one of the charges that I want is kind of a side note here. I think the larger issue is your assertions about the right of travel. You are accused of issuing false identification, and I've explored cases here in Chattanooga where charges, sort of low-level charges like this, completely bogus, are applied to defendants, often poor and often black. And this black man, I'm thinking of one right now, whom I wrote about in detail, went to the public defender's office, and there were 5 charges, and the only one that both sides agreed on and had him agree to was the one that was most removed from the facts. That was the Judge David Bales complaint against a man who was an aggressive panhandler and then who apparently threatened him. But we covered that story, and the charge that everyone agreed to was the one that really had nothing to do with the actual offense that reasonably could be seen in the facts of the case. So you are charged with false identification. What does the statute say about what is exactly the offense alleged against you, Tracy, on that point?
Well, they're alleging that I obtained goods, privileges, or services using the name Tracy Arnold. That's what that statute says, and I'm not sure why he charged me with that. I guess, he was laughing about it at the time, and but there's no goods, privileges, or services that I attempted to obtain. So I'll be asking him if somebody from the public has accused me of attempting to obtain this, or if he has evidence that I attempted to obtain goods, services, or privileges.
And then the statute goes on to say privileges to which the person is not otherwise entitled or eligible. So it's not just that you applied with a false ID, but you applied for ones for which you were ineligible.
Oh, okay.
It goes further.
Excuse me.
So it seems to me that the official, the accusing officer, is almost reckless, and that's where, in a way, I think you may be right. There may be some malice and bad faith in the way these charges were stacked up against you. Tracy Arnold of Hardin County, facing a Sessions Court judge in a few minutes. Well, are you anxious, or are you confident of God's protection? Are you confident of your rights here? How are you emotionally, being a woman? We always think women have emotion and they have heart, unlike men. What is the state of your state of mind and heart, Tracy Arnold, before you go into court today?
Well, I didn't sleep last night, so that kind of got rid of any emotion that I might have. But normally I am very nervous, but this is just a preliminary hearing. This isn't trial, so I'm just there to get the officer's testimony and challenge the jurisdiction. So it shouldn't be that much of a big deal. It's not trial.
But you're going to try to get the charges dismissed, all of them. Is that right?
Yes, I'll be motioning for the charges to be dismissed for failure to state a cause of action, and which is not showing the statute that imposes a duty, or not showing factual sufficiency that statute or ordinance actually applies to me. I forgot where I was going with that. Sorry.
So you're saying you're going to be arguing that the law effectively on your side. You're saying that the law, as cited in the charges, doesn't apply to the facts of your case, and therefore the court doesn't have jurisdiction.
Correct. I'm not in commerce, and unless he could show evidence that I'm in commerce, then I believe that I am exercising my constitutional rights and that the commercial laws do not apply.
Well, Tracy Arnold, thanks very much for talking with my listener. We're grateful for your time, and we wish you God's protection in the court today.
All right. Thank you.
Tracy Arnold is in Hardin County, and she'll be facing a Sessions Court judge today in a preliminary hearing in Savannah. That's the county seat. She lives in Adamsville with her husband, Bill, who's maybe 15 years her senior. He is a Linux programmer and expert, working online, very busy man. They have together 6 children, so Tracy's the mother and stepmother of 6. And today in the court, her husband will be there. He's not her next friend. He's not standing there in her place, as one does when one is not competent. But Tracy is standing before the judge herself. Her husband there in the gallery with Allison, 17 months old, on his knee when they get there. And she will be making the case herself. Tracy Arnold is not an attorney, and she's not represented by anyone, but she's speaking in her natural person, in her persona propria, if you would want to put it in the Latin. which is to say in her natural person, the parties most clearly identified as having constitutionally guaranteed rights. Now, of course, corporations have rights too. They have rights under the Constitution. But here we're dealing with a natural person, a human being of the female sex who will be standing before a judge and asserting that her use of the public road with her children in the back of the car is entirely innocent and that she is not guilty of any commercial offense at all. Because that's what the charges are. They're in commerce, claiming that she was in commerce just by being on the road, which is a mistake. Things can be similar or the same, but they're not the same. Okay, if things are similar, that's not to say they're the same. Travel is not the same as operating a motor vehicle in commerce, as we all do here. David Tulis with some deep state insight here at Nooga Radio.
The Tennessee Valley's news, talk, and sports leader. Nooga Radio, AM 1240 and